What lies at a depth of 11 kilometers beneath the water, where pressure is powerful enough to crush a tank and temperature barely rises above zero? The Mariana Trench, the deepest place on Earth, and what scientists found there very recently in 2024 and 2025 has rewritten practically all our understanding of life. This is not about mythical monsters from legends of ancient sailors, but about real, tangible creatures that somehow survive in conditions where, according to all laws of physics and biology, life is simply impossible. But, and this is the main point, the most frightening thing we discovered there is not what has lived on the bottom for millions of years. It is what we ourselves brought there. Plastic bags, wrappers, beer bottles, toxins that were banned half a century ago. We dumped our garbage into the most inaccessible place on the planet, and it stayed there forever. And the creatures that live on the bottom began eating it, began adapting to it, because it is now part of their world. Remember that the Mariana Trench is a place where, in all of human history, only 4 people have descended to the very bottom. More astronauts have been to the moon. It is farther from us than space. It is another planet, literally on our own planet, with its own laws of physics, its own ecosystem, its own horror. And today we descend there with you, using fresh data from the most recent expeditions to tell you the whole truth about what the Challenger Deep hides. You will learn about creatures that eat plastic, about microorganisms that, until recently, were considered impossible, about geological processes that literally rewrite the history of our planet, and about why the Mariana Trench is not simply the deepest place. It is a warning that there are no boundaries for life, but there are limits to our planet. If you are interested in such deep research, if you want to learn about the most shocking scientific discoveries, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Here we analyze not just entertaining facts, but stories that change our understanding of the world. Like this, if you are ready to descend into the abyss with us. Get ready. We are descending 11 kilometers deep, to the bottom of light, to the bottom of knowledge, into an abyss that begins to glow with a fire that was once hidden from human sight. The Mariana Trench is not simply a hole on the ocean floor. It is a gigantic fissure in the Earth's crust, one of the most geologically active zones on the planet. It is located in the western Pacific Ocean, to the east of the Mariana Islands, in a region that bears a sinister name, the Pacific Ring of Fire. This ring encircles the entire Pacific Ocean and is home to 75% of all active volcanoes on the planet. And the Mariana Trench is the deepest, darkest, and most alien point in this ring.
Its deepest point is called the Challenger Deep, and it descends 10,935 meters down. Let us understand what this means in real numbers. If you took Everest, the highest mountain on Earth, which rises 8,849 meters into the sky, and placed it on the bottom of the Challenger Deep, its peak would be underwater. There would still be almost 2 more kilometers of water above it. Imagine this scale, a mountain nearly 9 kilometers high, and it does not reach the surface. But that is not all. The trench was named after the HMS Challenger ship, which in 1872 first measured its depth. Back then, they thought it was 8,185 meters. They were wrong. The trench turned out to be deeper than they could possibly imagine. And in the modern era, the era of satellites and laser scanning, we know the exact coordinates of every meter of this abyss. Now let us talk about pressure. On Earth's surface, where you are sitting and watching this video, pressure is approximately 1 atmosphere. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, pressure exceeds 1,100 atmospheres. This means that every square centimeter of your body would experience pressure 1,000 times greater than the air pressure above you right now. For comparison, a tank weighs about 60 tons. The pressure at the bottom of the trench would be enough to crush that tank flat if you lowered it there. Your body, soft and fragile, would simply explode from such pressure in mere seconds. Temperature at the bottom of the trench ranges from 1 to 4 degrees Celsius. It is not quite frozen water, but it is an icy cold, the kind you would feel if you jumped into an icy lake in the middle of winter. But if you found yourself at the bottom of the trench, cold would be your least problem. Pressure would pierce you through long before cold became dangerous to you. And most importantly, it is complete and absolute darkness. Sunlight does not penetrate there by even a fraction of a percent. At a depth of just 200 meters, the twilight zone begins, where sunlight becomes barely visible. And at a depth of 1,000 meters, complete, impenetrable darkness sets in. At the bottom of the trench at a depth of 10 kilometers, utter blackness reigns, so black that human imagination can barely conceive of it. This is not simply an absence of light. It is an absence of the possibility of light. Nothing shines there, nothing glows. There is only cold, pressure, and endless black emptiness.
A real breakthrough occurred in 2020-2025 when new technology emerged on the scene. A Chinese deep-sea apparatus called Vandouzier, which translates as fighter, began making regular dives into the trench. This is not simply a bathyscaphe. It is an entire underwater laboratory equipped with a cabin made of special titanium alloy, capable of accommodating 3 people and withstanding pressure exceeding 1,100 atmospheres. But the main thing is that this apparatus can conduct direct 4K streaming from a depth of 10,000 meters. Imagine clear video from the darkest, coldest place on Earth transmitted in real time. This happened just a few years ago. In 2024 and 2025, Vandouzier made 23 dives into the Mariana Trench, and each one brought new discoveries, new questions, and new answers to old mysteries. The Mariana Trench is not simply a depth record. It is a portal to a world that remains almost unknown to us. It is the frontier of our knowledge. And when we actually began to look there, when we developed the technology to see what is happening there, we discovered something that forced us to reconsider everything we knew about life, about survival, and about the limits of the possible. Pressure at the bottom of the Mariana Trench is not simply a number. It is a concept that goes beyond our ordinary understanding. 1 atmosphere, that is the pressure you feel right now. It is the weight of air pressing on you from all sides, and you do not notice it because you are used to it. At the bottom of the trench, pressure is 1,100 atmospheres. This means pressure increases 1,100 times over. Every square centimeter of your body would experience pressure equivalent to the weight of an elephant parked on that area. But this is not simply an unpleasant sensation. It is a physical force strong enough to deform matter. Take metal, take plastic, take any material you can possibly imagine. At the bottom of the trench, it will be compressed, deformed, transformed into something completely different. A tank weighing 60 tons and built to withstand artillery fire would be crushed by this pressure like a tin can. The human body, consisting of 60% water and 40% organic molecules, would have no chance whatsoever. It would simply explode. Cells would burst, molecules would tear apart, DNA would fragment into pieces. But creatures that live on the bottom have undergone millions of years of evolution adapting precisely to this pressure. Their cells are restructured to function under such pressure. Their proteins, their fats, the very chemistry of their life is altered to withstand what was supposed to kill them. This is not simply adaptation. It is a complete reconstruction of what it means to be a living organism. Now let us talk about temperature. On the surface of the sea, even in cold northern waters, temperature can drop to 0 to 5 degrees Celsius in the coldest months. People can, in such conditions, walk, fish, work if they are dressed appropriately. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, temperature is 1 to 4 degrees Celsius. It sounds approximately the same, but in reality, it is a completely different temperature. You see, on the surface, water can freeze below 0 because fresh water freezes at 0 degrees. But salt water, saturated with salt, freezes at -2 degrees. And at the bottom of the trench, water cannot freeze because pressure prevents it. Water remains liquid, but icy, utterly, absolutely lifeless at first glance. It is like living in a freezer compartment of a refrigerator. Your body loses heat at a rate that exceeds all possible imagination. If you found yourself at the bottom, even in a special suit, you would freeze in mere minutes. And this is even before pressure would have already killed you long before. But the most terrifying aspect is absolute and complete darkness. Have you ever been in a cave where there is not a single light source? Do you remember what it looks like? It is not simply darkness. It is an almost physical presence of black pressing on you from all sides. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, darkness is even more complete because there is no way for light to penetrate there. Sunlight can penetrate to a depth of about 200 meters. Beyond that, it becomes twilight. At a depth of 1,000 meters comes absolute night. And at a depth of 10 kilometers, this is not simply night. It is the absence of the concept of day. Nothing shines, nothing glows. There is only cold, pressure, and blackness, blackness, and blackness again. Dissolved oxygen at the bottom of the trench is minimal. If at the surface, seawater contains enough oxygen for the life of fish, marine mammals, and everything else, then at the bottom, oxygen is extremely scarce. This means that breathing there is almost impossible in the normal way. Organisms living there had to find alternative ways of obtaining energy, and they found them. They feed on chemical reactions occurring in volcanic rocks on the bottom. They eat stones. Literally, in the truest sense, they extract energy from chemicals that are ejected from the Earth's interior, from chemical reactions that occur at the boundary between the lithosphere and the hydrosphere. Pressure, cold, darkness, and lack of oxygen. These are 4 trump cards against life. Under normal conditions, any one of these factors would be deadly. Together, they form an infernal combination that seems to completely exclude the possibility of life. This is why scientists were so shocked when they discovered that not only is there life there, but life thrives, adapts, and evolves. These were not simple bacteria. These were complex ecosystems with hundreds of species of organisms, each of which found its own way to survive in conditions that should have been completely unsuitable for life. And there, in this hell, in this place of eternal cold, eternal darkness, and eternal pressure, we found something completely different. We found exactly the same thing as everywhere else. Garbage, waste, toxins. Everything we threw into the sea ultimately settles on the bottom. And there, on the bottom of the world, creatures that live in conditions that should have been unsuitable for life began adapting to our garbage, began eating it, began extracting something from it. This is the edge of the world. This is the boundary of the known. This is a place where all the laws we know end and completely different laws begin to operate. And when we finally opened a window into this world, thanks to new technologies, thanks to the appearance of apparatus capable of descending there, we discovered not emptiness, but life. Life in its strangest, most alien, most unpredictable form. When Fenduja first descended to a depth of almost 10 kilometers in 2024, the apparatus's video cameras began transmitting images in real time. The screen of the monitor in the scientific center illuminated the faces of scientists who were watching the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Dirt, rocks, emptiness. That is what they expected to see. This is what all models, all theories, all equations predicted. An abyss, empty, dead, barren. But then the camera moved forward, and they saw it. Colonies. Entire cities of microscopic organisms built on the bottom. Tubular worms resembling organ pipes growing out of sediment. They were white, almost transparent, and they moved. They moved.
At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, where it seemed nothing should move, living creatures moved. Bivalve mollusks, resembling oysters, but completely different, attached to stones and to the bodies of worms. These organisms built themselves cities, complex structures, where they lived side by side with each other, forming entire ecosystems. It was a shock. Not simply a discovery, but a complete, radical revision of what we knew about life. Until that moment, it was believed that at such a depth, under such pressure, in such cold and in complete darkness, only bacteria could live. Perhaps some primitive organisms, single-celled creatures that somehow flailed about in liquid. But worms? Mollusks? Organisms with complex structure? With organs? With systems that we could make out on video? This was impossible. And yet it was. But how do they live there? How do they feed? On Earth's surface, practically all life depends on the sun. Plants use sunlight for photosynthesis, producing sugars from carbon dioxide and water. Animals eat plants. Predators eat herbivores. The entire chain of life begins with the sun. But at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, there is no sun. There is no light. There is no photosynthesis. There is no direct source of energy that all terrestrial life is accustomed to.
So where do they get their energy? The answer lies beneath their feet. Beneath these worms and mollusks are volcanic rocks. And from these rocks, through fissures and cracks in the Earth's crust, hot water bursts out, saturated with chemicals. This is water from the Earth's mantle, and it contains hydrogen, hydrogen sulfide, methane, and many other chemical compounds. When this hot water meets the cold water of the trench, chemical reactions occur, and organisms that live there use the energy of these chemical reactions. They eat stone, literally, in the truest sense of the word. They extract energy from inorganic matter, from pure chemistry, from the interaction of elements. This is called chemosynthesis, and it is a completely different way of life than photosynthesis. Instead of using sunlight, organisms use thermal energy and chemical energy. This is not simply interesting from a scientific point of view. It fundamentally changes our understanding of what life means. If life can exist by feeding on chemical reactions in complete darkness, what does that say about the possibility of life on other planets? On icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn, which presumably have underground oceans similar to this trench, there could be life. Life that has never seen the sun, that exists in complete isolation from the outside world. These worms and mollusks are not simply curious examples of adaptation, they are keys to understanding the boundaries of life throughout the entire universe. They are proof that life can exist practically anywhere if there is enough energy and chemical elements. This is a revolution in our understanding of biology, astrobiology, and the possibility of extraterrestrial life. But the longer scientists studied these colonies, the stranger everything became. These organisms were not simply surviving, they were thriving, they were growing, they were reproducing, they were competing with each other for resources, for space on the bottom, for access to chemical streams. This was not simply life, this was a complex, dynamic ecosystem that had existed for millions of years, completely unknown to us. Completely independent of the sun, from the surface world, from everything we call wildlife. And when scientists began collecting samples, began analyzing the DNA and RNA of these organisms, they discovered something even more astounding. These creatures are not ancient relics that survived from the time of dinosaurs. They are modern organisms that are still evolving, still adapting to their environment. They have relatives on the surface, but evolution took them down a completely different path. They became so different from terrestrial life, so specialized for living in these extreme conditions that they seem almost alien. This was the first find. Life. Real, tangible life, on video at the bottom of the most inaccessible place on Earth. And it opened Pandora's box. Because if life can exist here, what else lives there? What other organisms, what other ecosystems, what other forms of life hide in the darkness, waiting to be discovered?
After Fenduche made its first dives and documented the presence of complex life on the bottom, scientists decided to move to more systematic study. They could not simply watch videos and marvel. They needed samples. They needed proof. They needed to understand exactly what lives there in this alien world in the depths of our planet. A project began that they called MIR, Mariana Trench Environment and Ecology Research. This was the most extensive study of the microbiome of deep-sea trenches ever conducted. In March 2025, the results of this study were published in the journal Cell, one of the most prestigious scientific publications in the world. And the results were, to put it mildly, staggering. Scientists collected over 1,600 samples of water and sediments from various depths, starting at 2,000 meters and going all the way to 11 kilometers. Each sample was carefully analyzed, every microbe was identified, every DNA molecule was sequenced and recorded. When they finished analyzing, they had 92 terabytes of data in their hands. For comparison, 92 terabytes is approximately 30 million songs, or 18,000 full-length movies in 4K quality. This is a huge amount of information, all compressed into the genetic code of microorganisms living on the bottom of the trench. And when they began analyzing this data, their computer systems spat out results that made scientists jump from their seats. Identified 7,564 species of microorganisms, 7,500 species. And you know what is most astounding? 89.4% of these species were new to science. This means that of the 7,564 species, more than 6,700 had never before been described, classified, or known to humanity. Let us stop for a moment and grasp the scale of this discovery. On Earth's surface, in soil, in lakes, in rivers, in oceans, humanity has more than 20,000 described species of microorganisms. And here, in one trench, in one place on the planet, scientists discovered more than a third of that number, and these are only microorganisms. This is only what can be seen under a microscope. This is not counting all the larger creatures that live there. But what is most interesting is that these microorganisms were not simply a random mixture. They formed specific communities, specific ecosystems, depending on what depth they inhabited and what conditions surrounded them. At shallower depths, where there was more oxygen, certain types of microbes lived. At greater depths where oxygen was scarce, completely different species lived. This was specialization, adaptation to specific conditions, evolution in action. But most striking is the enzymes and genetic adaptations these microorganisms developed. Scientists discovered that local bacteria and archaea produce proteins and enzymes that exist in no other known microorganism on Earth. These enzymes are capable of breaking down molecules that were considered practically indecomposable. They are capable of digesting complex organic compounds that on the surface would accumulate for centuries.
Moreover, scientists discovered giant viruses, bacteriophages, viruses that infect bacteria. These viruses were unusually large and genetically complex. Their genetic code was far more complex than ordinary bacteriophages found on the surface. This indicates that even under extreme pressure, extreme cold, and extreme isolation, even at the bottom of the trench, evolution continues to operate. Viruses continue to mutate, continue to adapt to their hosts, continue to develop. One of the most striking findings concerned metabolism. Scientists expected to find microorganisms using classic energy pathways known from school: glucose oxidation, the Krebs cycle, electron transport chain. But instead, they discovered microorganisms using completely new energy pathways. They oxidize unusual chemical compounds. They get energy from reactions that should not even occur under these conditions. They use molecules that chemists considered inert, and unusable for generating energy. This meant that life at the bottom of the Mariana Trench operates by completely different rules than life on the surface. This is not simply adaptation, it is a reconstruction of the very fundamentals of biochemistry, a reconstruction of what it means to be a living organism.
We are passing 10,500.
This was evidence that life is far more flexible, far more universal, far more creative than we ever imagined. And all of this in one place, in one trench, on one planet. If we can find 7,500 new species of microorganisms at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, if we can find so many unknown life forms, so many new energy pathways, so many new genetic adaptations in one place, what other discoveries await us in the rest of the world's oceans? How many more life forms do we not know about? How many more forms of existence remain undiscovered by us? The MEER project became a turning point in our understanding of life on Earth. This is no longer simply a description of a few unusual organisms. This is a systematic study of an entire world that exists in parallel with the world we know. This is a microscopic world, invisible to the naked eye, but vast in scale, vast in complexity, and vast in the number of species that inhabit it. And this is only the beginning, only the tip of the iceberg. Scientists continue analyzing the data, and each day brings new discoveries, new surprises, new questions about what else might be hiding in the dark depths of our planet. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench lives a creature the size of a human finger. It is an amphipod, a small crustacean resembling a shrimp, but completely different. Its scientific name is Herendelia gigas, and it is the deepest dwelling amphipod known to science. It inhabits depths exceeding 8,000 meters and is perfectly adapted to extreme pressure. How does it manage to survive in such conditions? Its cells contain special fats that are not destroyed under pressure of 1,000 atmospheres. Its muscles contract normally, its nervous system works, its heart beats, everything like an ordinary amphipod, but redesigned to function under conditions that should have killed it. But what is most shocking is not its very existence. The most shocking discovery came when scientists began analyzing its digestive system. In the intestines of this small amphipod, they found traces of plastic, microplastic, fibers from clothing, fragments of plastic bags. And here's the main point. This amphipod did not simply accidentally swallow plastic. It digests it. Its stomach juice contains enzymes that are capable of breaking down polymers, breaking down materials that on Earth's surface do not decompose for hundreds of years. How did this happen? Evolution, adaptation. When plastic began settling at the bottom of the trench in enormous quantities, the amphipods had no choice. There was no traditional food around them that they were accustomed to eating. There was only an endless carpet of plastic, microplastic, fibers, fragments. And these amphipods that developed the ability to digest this material survived. Those that could not do so died of hunger. Over several generations, natural selection created an organism capable of eating what humanity created and discarded. This is not a victory for the amphipod. This is a tragedy. It means we dumped our poison so far and so deep that even microscopic creatures began evolving in response to our pollution. They did not simply adapt, they were forced to change in order to stay alive. And now they eat our garbage, transform it inside themselves, and become yet another link in a chain that begins with our consumer culture and ends in the deepest pit on the planet.
We have poisoned the most inaccessible place on the planet. We dumped our garbage and our toxins there, And they remained there, becoming part of the ecosystem, becoming part of the life of the creatures that live on the bottom. And these creatures, which evolved over millions of years, which learned to survive in conditions that should have killed them, now must struggle not only with extreme pressure and cold, but also with our pollution, with our poisonous legacy. The Mariana Trench has stopped being simply a record on a geographic map. It is no longer simply the deepest hole. It is a portal to a world that exists parallel to ours, a world we knew nothing about until very recently. It is a place where life finds a way to exist in conditions we considered absolutely unsuitable for life. It is a place where biochemistry operates by completely different rules, where evolution moves in directions we cannot predict. But here lies the true tragedy. We did not come there to learn and to marvel. We came bearing the legacy of our civilization, with garbage, with toxins, with pollution. And this pollution has already begun changing what lives in this abyss. Amphipods that never saw plastic in their evolutionary history now eat it. Organisms that lived for millions of years in complete isolation from our world now accumulate in their bodies poisons we created and forgot. The Mariana Trench is a mirror. It reflects not so much our capacity for exploration and discovery as our inability to care for the planet that feeds us. It is a reminder that there are no boundaries that garbage cannot cross, there are no depths that pollution cannot reach. Even at the edge of the world, even where cold, pressure, and eternal darkness reign, there is our mark. There is our responsibility. But it is also a place of hope, because in this abyss, despite everything, creatures live that adapt, that evolve, that find a way to live even in our polluted world. They teach us that life can be unexpectedly resilient, unexpectedly creative, unexpectedly enduring. And if life can adapt to our pollution at the bottom of the trench, can humanity too adapt? Can we change our way of life before it is too late? We have explored less than 5% of the Mariana Trench floor. 95% remain unstudied. The 7,500 species of microorganisms we discovered are only the beginning. How many more species await us? What other discoveries, what other shocking finds, what other evidence of life in conditions that should have been deadly still hide in the depths? If these discoveries have shaken you, subscribe to our channel. Here we analyze stories about monsters, about myths, about the Kraken, about mermaids, about all those creatures that people feared and revered throughout millennia. Because the boundary between science and myth in the ocean is much thinner than we think. Like this, if you believe that far more hides beneath the waves. Thank you for being with us. The ocean keeps its secrets,